In this lesson, we'll learn how to add some serious color correction to our image, which will help us to create a more impactful and dramatic scene. Okay, so in the previous lesson, we wrapped up with kind of fitting these road signs into our scene a little bit better. And overall, I think I'm pretty happy with everything we've done, and now we're ready to add some color correction. So really, at this point, I mentioned doing some fairly dramatic color correction, and really what this boils down to is your creative vision for this particular scene. So a good place to start, if we come over here, let's just create a new group, and we'll call this color correction. And I'm going to come in here and add an adjustment layer. So we'll come in and click on that half black, half white circle at the bottom of our layers panel. And I'm going to come in and add a color lookup adjustment layer. Now, if we do that, it's going to open up our properties window. And if you're familiar with LUT files or lookup tables, you'll know that there are ways of remapping the colors in this case, an image to another set of colors. So we've got a lot of different ones here. All you need to do is come over and click on one of these drop-down menus. And basically what these are kind of like presets to help you achieve a certain look for your image. Now, in our case, these aren't going to be just a one-click solution. We're going to find one of these that kind of fits the look that I want to make, and then we're going to be probably modifying it some. So let's come in here and just take a look at some of these. Maybe this fall colors, color lookup. Let me just move this out of the way. There we go. You can kind of see what that looks like here. And I'll just move this over, drop this down again, and I'll choose maybe this edgy amber. You can kind of see what it's doing. So basically, essentially these 3D LUT file presets are performing multiple adjustments at once, just with one simple click. So these are a way that you can apply one of these quote-unquote looks to your image. The one I'd like to use for this particular image is this bleach bypass. So we'll go ahead and select that. Now, basically, that's doing quite a bit here. And as a matter of fact, if we hide that, you can see it's completely washing out our mountains here. Right over here. These completely go away. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is let's go ahead and reduce the intensity of this effect just a little bit. I'm going to drop the opacity of this adjustment layer down to 50 or 55%, something like that. So that way it's still being applied here. We're still getting this nice bleached look, but we're still going to have some detail in our background, namely those mountains for right now. So, but you can see here that this is really seriously desaturating a lot of the colors. It's really washing a lot of them out as well. So this is kind of the first step that I would take in creating sort of this eerie post-apocalyptic zombie apocalypse type look. So now, after this, let's come over here and add a new layer. So I'm going to add a new layer, and we'll just move this below our color lookup adjustment layer. And I'm going to come over here and set this to something like hard light. So what I'd like to do at this point is I'd like to really beef up the yellows in the image. Add some almost golden yellows in to kind of play off of the greens that are still left in this image. So with this hard light layer, let's go ahead and grab a brush. I'm going to go ahead and hit my B key on the keyboard, and let's go with something like this big airbrush soft round. And I'm going to make that pretty large by right-clicking and dragging. And let's go ahead and set the opacity to something maybe low, like 30%, so we can kind of gradually increase this. And I'm going to come in here and click on my foreground color so we can select a color here. So I'm going to choose kind of a pale, warm yellow color. Maybe something in there. And let's go ahead and start with that here. So we talked about in a previous lesson that we wanted our light source to be coming into the frame from kind of this top left corner off frame. So obviously that's going to be casting some kind of a color contamination onto this area right here. So I'm going to bring in and start right there by just gradually dragging my brush across. So just come in here, kind of feather that color in, kind of gradually. Now, the one downside to using this hard light layer is that it's also affecting our blacks. So you can see that our blacks are starting to be not quite as deep. I'm going to come in and maybe apply that along in the foliage a little bit. Now we could come in here and use a layer mask if we were to click on that. Maybe come in and grab a little different brush, maybe our hard round opacity. And maybe some of these areas we don't want to be affected. Maybe this particular set of windows right here that is kind of away from our light source. So we could come in here and just paint in a mask for that. Feel free to spend as much time as you'd like painting that. I'll hit the X key on my keyboard, just kind of alternate back and forth. So we could kind of selectively pull some of this coloration out. Now, the next step in this process, being that we have sort of basically washed out a lot of our deeper blacks, is to kind of bring them back. What I'd like to do is maybe do an adjustment for levels at this point. I want to come in and hit this a few more times just to make sure that I've got some nice yellow colors in some of the areas that I feel like are still missing them here. Maybe something like that. Come in and mask a little bit of that out. All right, so let's go ahead and drop in another adjustment layer here for levels. So we'll go ahead and drop that in right on top of this layer. And just move this to the side here. I'll actually just snap it right in there above my layers panel for right now. And I'm going to come in and bring up the blacks first. So we'll kind of bring that up. Really kind of deepen in those blacks some. You can see some of these areas are getting pretty dark. But if we were to come in and hide that adjustment layer, that just made a big difference in the overall range of value in the image. So we've got some really nice stuff going on there. Now if we'd like to, we could even come in here and bring the whites down a little bit, which will essentially clip some of the values there. So you can see we can start to bring the whites up if we wanted to maybe wash them out a little bit more. You can see how bright those whites are starting to get here. Now, I don't know how bright I really want to bring the whites. I think that's almost too much, so I'm going to bring that back up a little bit more. Kind of find a nice balance here. All right, great. So I think this is a great place to start for our color corrections. Let me go ahead and close out of this Properties panel and show you what it looks like before the color corrections here. If we come in and click on the eyeball next to our color correction group, we can see that we have just made a dramatic difference in the look of our image. So with those color corrections in place, the image is really starting to come together. I think we've got some really great stuff going on here. But if you remember early on, we placed in some buildings here for our skyline. And those really, when I bring those back in, don't look quite right. Those feel extremely out of place right now. So what I'd like to do in the next building is begin pushing those buildings back and making them fit into this kind of this surreal scene a little bit better. So we'll get started with that in the next lesson.